I want to start off by thanking everybody to be here. And this week we have Mark Samuels, partner, executive producer at Stringbean Films in South Africa, coming here to share stories with us. Thank you, Mark.
Well, thank you very much for having me.
Tell us how you originally got started in entertainment.
So I obviously come from a very bush background. I come from a farming family in Zimbabwe. And we used to have a lot of old 8mm and 60mm cameras that we used to film our little expeditions into Rhodesia, Zimbabwe, and fishing trips and game viewing trips into the valley when there were no roads in the old days. So basically grew up with, cameras and a lot of photographs and a lot of old movie reels that as kids we used to watch. And it always interested me. So when I left school, we had conscription in South Africa in the army. And my father was a cross-border operative in the reconnaissance unit. So I lived under military rule for 22 years of my life, so to say. So when I finished school, I wasn't going to go to the army. And I chose what I loved was photography, design, drawing, sketching. So I basically applied to get into architecture. Got into architecture, did a bit of drafting, and then luckily for me, at the end of my studies, conscription ended. So I got into the working field. I worked for a design company, creating exhibition stands for worldwide clients. And then my director of the company at the time I was working for said to me, you should really get into advertising and film. So I moved down to Cape Town from Durban, Natal, and got into Ogilvy Mather's Red and Yellow College. And lo and behold, met some film people and started scouting part-time while I was studying. And I think that's where the bug bit. Finished up a year and a half of advertising college and then jumped straight into it as a PA. And been 33 years since then of excitement, hard work, a lot of surprises, as we know in the film industry, what it does for us. But it's been fantastic. Yeah. It's been great. As we all know, the film industry, we call it in South Africa, is called feast or famine. When there's a lot of work around, we all feast. And when there's no work, it's a bit of famine. It's and it's taken a good journey in South Africa. Young market when I started, only two or three production companies in Cape Town. And now I think we're up to about 300 strong, production units across all aspects of the digital market. So, yeah, it's really, really interesting. And it's nice to see something grow, into a worldwide leading sort of city.
That's fantastic. I didn't realize that it had grown that much over the years out there. I know for myself, I've shot there. I was out there with AfriScreen on a shoot, and then I went in and out of Mound. Yeah, and I went in and out of Mound and the Okavango Delta out there. And at the time, again, decades ago or whatever, it was a much smaller community, and everybody that I talked to and everything that I've seen since then, it just constantly, it's one of the areas in the world that constantly grows.
Yeah. I think, this is the African market. We've only, started scratching the surface in recent years. I do love your story about Mound. You probably had lions and elephants walking through it in those days. They still have that today. Literally on the peripherals of Mound. So it must be quite exciting in those times when you were out there. But, Cape Town's developed into a world city, film destination. And, we are very thankful for that. It's created a great opportunity for a lot of young creatives in the African market.
Yeah. What is it about that area of the world or South Africa and Africa or the continent in general that keeps bringing people back to create content? What is it about it?
I think we're very fortunate as South Africans, as Africans. We're very hardworking people. We're known for our discipline sometimes, but very, very hardworking. And I think it's something that a lot of South Africans enjoy, but South Africa is one of the oldest film markets in the world, along with France, the oldest filmmakers in the world. So I think it's been in our blood and a passion, and storytelling is a great thing from the different cultures that make up South Africa. South Africa is made up of a Dutch, French, Malaysian influence, and as we know in history and culture, stories are told by the elders, and I think a lot of films come from those. There's a lot of culture within our communities and our societies, so there's a lot of stories to tell. South Africa itself is a filming destination. We're very fortunate that we have a large amount of location options. We can go from deserts, as you know, you've been out to Africa, 10 minutes out of Cape Town to rolling white sand dunes to, French Riviera, seaside mountain cliff communities to open arid plains, like the prairies in America. We've got the vineyards. You move across Natal, it looks like you're in Europe. You could be in Britain, you could be in Normandy in France. So we're blessed to have a landscape that dynamically changes over a couple of 100 kilometers, which makes great film destinations, with short logistics in terms of, movements and things like that compared to a lot of other countries in the world. And I think our great favor in this country is, the exchange rate with our, American and European counterparts. It's a good bang for buck to come out, and you're getting great service, some of the best technical crews in the world. And we're very fortunate to have some of the big gear houses who have cemented themselves in South Africa, in Johannesburg and South Africa. So anything that you look for in terms of equipment-wise, if you're a feature film, producing team and you're looking to come out, or commercials, or down to digital and vloggers, we've got, landscape culture equipment and the best trained crews in the world currently.
You brought something up that I love, and Kip and I have been talking about it a little bit. You brought up hardworking and how hardworking South African crews are, because across, like, we all make the joke, this is Africa or TIA, but when it comes to the crews themselves, I've never met harder workers across the planet. They've always been like that. What is it about that South African film community in general that just brings so many crew members that are at that high level in their game?
I think we've been very fortunate within our markets. I say a quick progression, although South Africa has been one of the oldest film markets in the world. I think people want clients to come back, as we all do. We want, as any filmmaker, you want to give your clients the best service possible. And at the end of the day, everybody, is proud of what we do. Everybody recognizes everyone's roles. Teamwork in South Africa is phenomenal. Whether it's one department asking for help for another, or everybody has to scratch together to get something done. South Africans, I think, is just in the nature of their blood. Pioneers mostly, rediscovering land as their old sort of cultures and things like that. So, at the end of the day, I think it's a team that gets down and basically fulfills an agenda that they want to see return clients coming back, which we often do, and creates this big family. So, once you get to a set in the morning and you've rushed to park cars, or you've arrived in the middle of the bush, the biggest thing is a quick banter for 10 or 15 minutes that has to get broken up, around a craft table or a coffee table in the middle of the bush. It could be in a street, it could be in a 7-star hotel. The AD has to come in and, come on, guys, it's work time. You could have chatted ages ago. Everyone loves to catch up and see what everyone's doing if it's, the start of a shoot. The camaraderie ship is huge, within South Africa. It's great. We have a very good sense of humor, and nobody holds back in terms of the jokes and things like that.
I remember you talk about the sense of humor with South African crews, and I always say that was the one thing that stood out when I was out there. One of the camera assists on the shoot I was on brought one of those little electronic fart machines that you put under a chair and then you hit the button. And this
Yeah.
like bush hunter,
Yeah.
this bush hunter thought it was the greatest thing that he had ever seen in his life. He's like, he just couldn't get enough of making people sound
Yeah.
like they were farting and laughing as loud as he could. He actually made me this or gave me this to get
Yeah.
the fart machine. He was like, I was like, that's a trade. I'm making that trade.
Hilarious.
So I took it off the camera assist. I gave it to him. You also brought up, and it's something we ask a lot of people, which is about camaraderie, because it is very prevalent within going to shoot within South Africa. You're always having a laugh. You're always having a good time, even under pressure.
Yeah. You know, I think the film industry is part of the creative arts industry. It doesn't matter the racial divide. It doesn't matter the religious divide. It's a group of people that are open-minded, liberal. You know, we all have the same thoughts, that the same interests. And that's part of it. I think it's a big cultural thing that people like to get together. Um, to hear their stories about their lives, the people that they are. And I think, a lot of people have grown up. Unfortunately, we had, I didn't live here for a lot of the time. I was living in a rural homeland called the Transkei, which is an independent homeland. And I came from, Rhodesia, Zimbabwe. So didn't get to experience, the negative sides of apartheid. So I think a lot of people growing up, you had the mix of friends that were there, but sort of rule of law, you were separated. So a lot of the time people, when they got together, it was big festivities and happenings. And I think that's where the camaraderie comes in, is that we're all human. We all love the creative arts. We all love to make film. So I think, allowing that aspect, because obviously film was, certain things were banned under our old laws in South Africa. So it managed to get everybody together, to work together, to experience the different cultures that everyone had, their religions. And I think that's where the camaraderie comes from, is a bunch of bandits, so to say, of the old days, getting together to make incredible work. And that's how friendships develop.
Calling around and talking to people about you specifically, there was one thing that got brought up on 4 separate phone calls, and it's a quality I want to ask you about. Everybody that I talked to about you said that you don't yell and that you don't allow yelling on sets. What is your approach to solving problems in a moment where something is going wrong in a big way?
I think obviously growing up, I was taught, from a father that was obviously in the reconnaissance cross-border things, and being farmers ourselves, is that there's always a solution to any problem. Rather analyze it, think of the best possible route, and then basically solve it, and then afterwards have a debrief of how that scenario came about, what could have been done to prevent it, and then obviously going forward, this, the circumstances or the procedures to be followed. I think as filmmakers, we experience life in a lot of different aspects to a lot of other people. And I think with that experience, we come across encounters that your not average Joe or your average civilian usually encounters. So we're put in circumstances that we experience things that we have to problem solve those through, and work through those. And I think it's life experience. I'm a bit of an African gypsy, so I grew up in the African bush at a young age, had to move. When a new regime came in, and then dropped into like a tropical jungle coastline. So I went from lions and elephants down to sharks and seals, and then back into farming and that. So again, I'd say it's life experiences. You have to say to yourself that you have to remain calm. Not everybody can show that it's obviously all nerves and tension, but you got to bring your A game. It's like American football style getting onto a field. Your knees can't start crumbling. But at the same time, as per your question, I think you've got to analyze the situation, get the best solution for it, and then debrief afterwards how that came about, or how we're not going to get into that situation again. I think hopefully that answers your
Nice.
question.
Yeah, absolutely it does. And very clearly too. It's a great way to just break it down to this is how we go forward. 1, 2, 3, debrief
Yes.
afterwards.
And the one thing that I've learned, and I've been very fortunate in my career to have worked with some of the world's best DOPs, cinematographers, lighting cameramen, grips, gaffers, set dressers, designers, from all aspects. In the commercial world, when I started, whoever you were in the world, it didn't matter whether you're, a famous feature film DOP or whatever. There's certain clients that in those positions you wanted to have on a show reel. So, if you're a famous arts DOP, you wanted to have a Louis Vuitton or a Gucci spot on your reel as well as your feature films. And a lot of that experience, and I'm an avid listener, and I firmly believe that you learn something new every single day and listen to what people have to say. And another thing that I was taught by, my grandfather and my grandmother is that respect comes from respect. So, people earn respect, but, if you meet somebody, you give them respect straight away. If they don't respect you, then you don't have to respect them. But respect comes from respect. So, I think it's upbringing as well. And a lot of South Africans are brought up like that. A lot of Africans, so to say.
Yeah.
It's in our cultures.
You brought up a few things in that last one, and it made me want to bounce around. But there was one you were talking about directors of photography and different people coming in and doing stuff like that. What is one of your most memorable shoots where it was about the beauty of the land or the beauty of the shot? What is the one that you look back on going, "Wow, that was a fantastic shoot. That
Well,
was beautiful."
they're a couple. You don't know how old I am, but no, I'm joking. They're a couple. I was very, very fortunate, my early career to have worked with some of the old school. As you know, in the old days, we worked on celluloid. There was no digital. So it was real filmmaking then. No, I'm only joking to everyone. Yeah, it's
Yeah.
in video. I was very fortunate to work with Gordon Smith Jr. His father was the DOP of the Godfather movies.
Yeah.
Somebody that, I've always had a passion about cameras. I did all my camera courses. I worked as a VTO operator with old mix and overlay desks. I did my loaders courses, loading film and stuff like that in the old days, and the lenses and that. But, I was a PA when I worked with him, and that kind of set my path in terms of creativity of film and something to learn. Obviously he had learned eons of experience from his father. And, he basically said to me, you never choose a set to dress it. You choose a set as it is to minimally light it. It's in film, obviously, all lighting's measured in Kelvin, as we know, especially for the younger generation, remember that. And, he would basically light everything with candles. We did this amazing setup, a couple of amazing setups with them. And, I was a PA in those days, so I was looking after him and his line producer from Los Angeles. And I drove them around. I was basically their slave, as a PA in the old days. And, just had a great rapport with them. They were very interested in my upbringing and my life that I had experienced. And, I just sucked everything in that I could get from them. And learning from somebody like that to walk into environments or sets, and he would just, the lighting team were blown away. Usually you have your 18Ks, your Sunpars, your 2.5s, your whole lighting kit, your truck, Jenny's parked there. I think he had an 8-ton truck full of candles of different sizes. that's how he lit. He got his old school light meter out. He'll say, put another 7 candles in that corner over there. We're going to build that wall over there, with candles. That's going to be our bounce. And I was just like literally blown away. You don't get to have that kind of experience.
Wow.
Excuse me, as a filmmaker, usually it's bright lights and camera, not candles and camera. So, it was a great experience.
Have you ever had an encounter on a set with one of those, with a predator or an apex predator that luckily you got away from? But has there been any stories about that?
Well, there've been a couple. Been charged by an elephant, smashed, 2 or 3 times on a game viewer. On one of the shows, on our prep stages, nearly rolled us. Had 1 or 2 buffalo charges in a car, so it's clear and present danger out there sometimes. But I think it's knowing your environment. And I think
Yeah.
having grown up with a family that grew up in the African bush, I think sometimes I'm a bit more wiser than most when they go out there, and looking for our environment. But there's been a couple of close calls. You wake
Yeah.
up with, noise. I'm a person that listens to my environment and what is going on in my environment around me in the wilderness. So nature will tell you if there's something that's happening, whether it's bird calls, rustling, those kind of things. But the worst experience, I think, is possibly being hit by the elephant a couple of times. I've had a couple of snakes under my bed, cruise across my bed. I think, as Africans in South Africa, it's part of growing up. It's
Everywhere else I've been in the world, jungles, rainforests, everything like that, you have protection. You bring protection with you, or locals and things like that.
mm,
But I was never in danger. I'm in South American
mm,
jungles. I'm more worried about bacteria and mosquitoes than I am something coming out of the tree at me. Um, However, in Africa, it was the first time I felt like I got put back into the food chain. Like if they would have just left me
yes,
out there, it was like, oh, I've got 4 hours before something eats me.
yeah, no, absolutely.
That was the most, for somebody not from there, that was the most eye-opening scenario. It's like every day we were having some form of an interaction with something that would just rip my face off. And there was one point where all these baboons I can't even tell you how many just came through, and they were just like, come over here, come over here. A swarm of bees going overhead. I don't think
Mm,
people
mm, mm.
fully grasp unless you're there. You're like, wow, I'm right back into it. Like it doesn't take much for them to, I'm gone, you know. And that
Yeah,
sort of danger, although exciting at times, it's brutal if you've got somebody that can't handle it or a crew that isn't used to it.
I think coming to Africa, we're still very fortunate that in South Africa we have a very sort of original Garden of Eden, so to say. Still wild out there. A lot of areas aren't sort of explored or inhabited, which is a great thing because we love there's nothing better than wilderness environments that are true with the wildlife in their natural state. But I hear you, especially when you say it can be quite nerve wracking of people coming out. So they haven't experienced that anymore. We've had crew members that have gone, to have dinner, and they've been dropped off at a tented camp where they've stayed, and they've walked back and they've literally zipped their tent closed to have growling and gnarling, and snorting and that outside their tent. And, I'm sure Kip and them have told you stories about my earlier days with the Naked franchise of rescuing people out of their tents from, hyenas and snakes,
No.
that kind of thing.
Oh,
So,
yes, I did hear
it
some
can
of
be
that.
serious.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
It can be it can be scary. If you're not used to that, and outside, and I experience it a couple of times when I'm in the bush. There, one of my best things is I prefer sleeping in a tent than sleeping in a so-called chalet lodge or a hotel room, because literally you're part of nature. You can hear every insect, you can hear the calls of animals, You can feel the temperature changes, especially from our hot African climate to when it gets cool at night, and you have a good sleep. But those animals are around you the whole time. You can literally sleep with 2 millimeters of canvas and have a leopard or a hyena, which is a crazy thought to think, 5 to 10 centimeters away from your head, you've got this primitive predator or beast literally just walking past you. You can hear it's, panting right next to your tent. But that again, that's part of the excitement. And I think that's what draws people to come and experience that. I mean, I know our tourism market is flooding into the areas and I think it's something that people want to feel, that primeval state. If you think of the old Bushmen that you worked with
Yeah.
in Botswana,
Yeah.
they live and breathe every single day.
They were amazing. They were there was his name was Mabudu, and he was like the guide, and he was on top of the Jeep, and he would just put the stick down on the front of the car, like to point which way the Jeep should start going. And we basically back at
Yeah,
camp, we
yeah,
were
yeah,
like,
yeah.
we want to do some scouting today. And he was like, all right. And he just kind of thought for a moment, and he just looked around, and the guy we were with, he was like, I go, what is he doing? He goes, he's just kind of feeling out where the stuff is. I'm like, what? And he goes, he's just getting a sense. And he's like, okay, let's go over here about 4 miles. I think we'll get some elephants. And you're like, and sure enough, you're like right in there. And he had this overall, like, just, he was one with everything. And it was the
Yes,
most
yes, yes.
amazing. He was one of the most amazing guys I've ever met. The other guy I met on that is a guy named Ronnie Kraus, who was on YouTube for hitting a lion between the eyes on mid run, and it hits him in the leg. Uh, he was
Mm-hmm.
um, he was this hunter guy out there, and again, just being around him in the bush and walking around and doing it, I don't know if I'll in this world I could ever be that in tune with anything as these guys were with their own environment. It was it's inspiring. You want to become that in any aspect of life, and they just had it right there.
Yes, yes. I think a lot of people, are born into that, and they never want to change their lives. To have that kind of environment to grow up in, it's a sense of tranquility, although there is a sense of danger, which they thrive on. But I think it's that environment and knowing that freedom. You don't have sirens and ambulances around you. People like that. Those bushmen, obviously, it's their culture, it's the way they've grown up. But people, like the rangers and the hunters and things like that. What better life could you really want? You don't have the strains of modern day society. You're talking about that. The Bushmen knowing the directions. I did an expedition across the Okavango Delta, and us modern world people, we go everywhere with a GPS, and obviously now it's Gaia on your phone. Um, you know, we had our mapping, and we knew where we started, and we were actually on our way to Maun. And we went from Sarunga, which is right at the top of the Panhandle, so it was about 600 kilometers we were doing on boat. And we had an old guy called Prophet, an old river bushman who grew up in Jadebe, an island in the Okavango Delta, and he was our guide. And you would just be literally hammering it across, open swampland, and then he'll just go, "Turn the boat here," and you're like, "Oh, this GPS is telling me a different thing." He says, "You must turn the boat here. The water goes this way." And that he's learned from his father, because he can see a tree in the island, 7 kilometers on the flat
Hmm.
water, but he knows that's. I think it's that kind of stuff you learn. It's passed down through
Yeah,
generational information. That we're losing a lot of
yeah,
that in the world at the moment. It's nice to be able to have experiences with those people, as you say.
yeah. I had one in South America, actually with Kip and David. We were in Ecuador, and we were on this. There was no roads; it was all river. You had to take everything by boat. and I had an emergency at like 2 a.m. and we had to go about a 30-minute boat ride, and it was, it's not a wide river, it's a winding, rainforest river.
Mm, mm,
This
mm,
boat
mm.
driver was 2 o'clock in the morning. He was full speed going down this thing. And we like originally got the lights out to like kind of look at it. He was turn those lights off. He goes, I can't see anything if you're sitting there pointing lights ahead. I know this river. I can do
Mm.
this in the dark. And we were pitch black. And this guy just, there was not a problem ever. And it was, but if you put the lights up, he couldn't do it. Tell me about, I read about a project, River Diamond Hunters. That was a project that you actually created
Yes.
and sold, if I'm not mistaken. Tell me about that one. Tell me how that came about.
Yeah, so I've got a great friend of mine, Brennan, who I grew up with surfing and was at school with. And, I'd been working in the television market as well. He's an astute director and editor who, he was out of South Africa. He's in Australia at the moment. And he phoned me up and said to me that his barber friend had a client who was going up to do some diamond explorations in the Lesotho Mountains. And I'm sure you know where Lesotho is. It's an independent homeland in South Africa. It's spectacular scenery. It's on the Drakensberg Mountains. So it's like our big sort of Rocky Mountain kind of landscape. And he phoned me and said, listen, my mate said he's cutting this guy's hair and he's looking for a team to go up and shoot it. I think, you should get up and see him. So I was on a big Guinness TV commercial in Durban at the time, shooting in sort of the back end of of Durban in like a favela that you get in Brazil and that. So I phoned these guys up and excuse me, I said to them, hi, my name's Mark Samuels. A friend of mine, Brendan, said I must give you a call. And he was like, oh, you're the guy from Nat Geo. And I was like, yeah. I have done projects for Nat Geo, but I'm not from Nat Geo. Oh, you're the guy from Nat Geo. So I thought, let's just run with this. So basically, I had a chat to him on the phone and I basically said, what are you guys going to do? And he says, no, we're going up to do this exploration. We're going to go and look for alluvial mountains in Lesotho. It's going to be as rough as hell. There's no food up there. We're a day's travel through ice, snow, away from everything. Set. I was like, that's my kind of, thing. Let's go out and explore and have some fun. So basically, after two conversations, the gear sales company phoned me up and said, hey, listen, your gear's ready. You can come and pick it up. I hadn't even got a confirmation from these, let's call them billionaire investors. I was like, really? They paid? 10 minutes later, I get a phone call and the investor says, we're leaving a week on Monday. You need to be here on the Friday for a boardroom meeting with your crew. And we'll see you on Friday. Just let me know about your tickets that you need to book. So it was a whirlwind kind of thing. So great opportunity. We lived in the Lesotho Mountains. Very basic. We were getting our food from the local community, mountain grown. Amazing people. All of our meat would just basically buy sheep. One of the crew would go around the back of the hut, do the old slaughter, skin them, and then we would hang them in the gear room / chill out area, catering area. And we did that for a year. An amazing experience. So kind of like almost a gold rush. So as well as being the producer, director, you become the TLB driver or the classifier or the pump machine, or just to create content. That at the end of the day, we
Yeah.
were trying to make a TV show. But yeah, the landscape was phenomenal. Four
Yeah.
seasons in one day, from snow, hail,
Oh,
rain to sun. And we spent a year of our lives in this remote, desolate location. Bonded again with a couple of friends amazing friends of ours, and created this television show. And obviously very small. Got hands on. I was doing DRT with in the evenings with the guys. Came down to Cape Town. We edited the whole thing. That we had found became characters, learned about the whole diamond industry and cutting stones, and then basically sold it. Discovery took it. We took a chance. Not many filmmakers We'll
Nice.
produce and shoot something, and then edit and put it to market
Nice.
without a buyer. But sometimes you've got to take chances. Yeah, so it was bought, and we
That's it.
were the number one show for about 8 months in Eastern Europe. So it was great to have the investors get their capital back, and also get a bit of royalty on the sideline, a bit of pocket money over the last couple of years. But yeah, true, phenomenal experience,
Nice.
phenomenal.
What's one of your wildest requests that you've ever had from somebody that, like, oh, we have to have this on set?
There have been some crazy requests. I was on a film, I obviously can't mention names, where, as you say, certain actors wanted iced coffees because the craft wasn't good enough, or they'd had an iced coffee from one of the franchise units in town, and 40-minute flight to bring iced coffees out twice a day, starts irking
Wow.
the crew a
Yeah.
bit. Um,
Yeah. Yeah.
Obviously we've had strange requests on film shoots for certain, energy drinks and things like that to be delivered, and, have literally sent a PA driving 4 hours there, 4 hours back to make sure that's on location, for them when they arrive at lunchtime or in the morning. Have done commercials where, directors of, they're obviously naughty boys in their, sides of things in their spare time, where they've directed entire films or commercials or scenes from a massage bed being massaged by a Thai masseur, and you're sitting there thinking, Jesus, dude,
I've had
who
that.
are you? Do you think so, but that's part of film, that's the enlightening part of it every single day. And as those kind of requests, you can't say no. It's like, oh, really, you want to direct
No,
this
you
scene while
gotta
you're
go.
getting
You
this?
gotta do.
It's like,
You gotta
find a time
smile and you
masseur
gotta
at
go.
1 o'clock in the morning. It's that kind of thing that you need to get done, so it's quite funny.
Yeah, I was always that was something that I was always wary about, like going in, and I used to manage it ahead of time because I used to say, like, you're asking me to
Mm-hmm.
go in and make these deals with locals and with different people, and if you're going to come back later and make me do all this other stuff, you don't understand the optics. It's not going to bode well if you're saying that we don't have any money, yet you
Yes.
need to helicopter something in to do it. You've got to, like you said, the transparency has to be there because otherwise it becomes a joke to some people.
Yeah, you're talking about transparency, especially with crews and things like that. And the luxuries, like you say, you're going out to do a shoot, and let's know what our big agenda is. You do lose a bit of respect from people because, you've begged and pleaded them, you've made deals, like you say, you've basically asked them for these kind of deals, and next thing it's this, all these luxuries and extra things, and they're like, oh, hang on, I've just signed a deal with you to do this, and now everyone's eating Wagyu steak burgers where, we said we can only afford X amount for craft or, for catering. So,
Oh,
just be honest up front. And
yeah.
obviously things do change. And, I always say to people, and I'd rather give you the worst case scenario. This is the worst that could happen.
In those survivor shows, when I first started doing them way back in the day, before the Naked and Afraids and stuff like that, there was always we had a situation where the requests were getting rather large as we went along. And I
Hmm.
remember as I left that show, I was like, I need to be off of this. It was that going in and having to look at people's faces if all of this stuff came in afterwards. So my point of view on the second episode was I'm going to tell them everything. And then
Yes,
then I
yes.
get heat from the production company because they're like, well, now they're overcharging us. I'm like, no, they're charging us correctly. This is what stuff costs.
Yeah.
Let's make sure we all know what it is. Because that last minute
Hmm.
stuff, it doesn't come cheaper because you do it last minute. It becomes way more expensive. So you might as well tell everybody up front, we need drinks out like that. Yeah. One of my favorite
Yeah, yeah.
lines on a camera guy that I had out on a shoot. I won't say the name of the area because I don't want to give away the camera guy, but I had a very large camera guy in this group. He was very big man. And he comes up to us the one day, and we're 4.5 hours by boat to where we need to be in town. Sorry, between boat and bus, we're 4.5 hours.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
he comes in screaming that there's no Diet Coke on set. And we're in the middle of like a rainforest in the middle of nowhere. And I'm like, we
Yeah, yeah,
have
yeah, yeah.
jugs. We have so much Diet Coke, you won't even believe it. It's called water, and there's jugs of it right there. Use that. Like, what are you
Yeah,
talking about? And it's amazing like literally the meltdown happening in front of you over something so small. So sometimes for myself as a production facilitator, sometimes it's just easier to just go, look, send a boat. Just send the boat and send the car and pick up 400 cases of
yeah,
this.
yeah,
I
yeah,
can't
yeah.
listen to it anymore. You know what I mean? You're like, how much is that?
No,
What's the butcher bill on that? All right, just go do it.
on a lot of shows, I come from a modest background, so not a life of luxuries and that. But it's amazing to see how crew expect certain things. I'm not talking about all crew in general, so I'm not generalizing, but certain individuals, they're known for that kind of, their wants and their luxuries. But you realize that they don't have that at home. Nobody has the kind of stuff, like on a commercial set. You arrive, there's a 7-star buffet of breakfast. The lunch is the same, the dinners are the same. The craft setup is just juices, confectionaries, every coffee that you want. And then you hear people complaining, you're like, really, dude, you have this at home every single day? So that kind of thing I laugh about sometimes. And now and again, I'll have a comment to say to put people in their places. But generally, I'm just like, do you do this at home every single day? Really?
Tell me about Stringbean Films, what they do, and what that is for you now, like owning something as opposed to just being a crew member. Give me a little background on all things Stringbean Films.
So basically, Stringbean Films is myself and my partner, Wesley Folshank. We worked together in an old company that I was a partner at for a while. And basically, I went on my own in 2019. Wesley we had worked together in the television world, creating content for different networks. And basically, we worked together, and I had the client base that I'd left the company with, that I, was previously a partner. And there was a lot of interest, and clients still wanted to come out. And, I knew that Wesley was the perfect match for, being a partner with. So we basically partnered up. We're recognized by our clients for our work ethics and the hard work that we put in, to create, their great shows. So basically, we joined up, and Stringbean Films is basically a small boutique facilitation company. We're based in Cape Town. We have a great network of crew, that a lot of staff crew. Wesley's also from a crew background, but went more into editing and directing. So together, we know Africa. We've worked across Africa, so we're very fortunate to have a small company that we're able to offer international clients unique destinations, a lot of places people that can't get into, because we've got a network on the ground of properties that are private. We have great relationships with government institutions and networks that, through our transparency and our openness, have been welcome back. And a lot of people still expect us to come back, which we are trying to get work to them. So basically, we're a one-stop facilitation shop. We basically will set the budget in place. We find the locations. We will handle the entire part of an aspect of the production, along with the international production team, and basically ease the pressure off for them, so that they can have a streamlined production, cost effective, and at the end of the day, something that that they've created to a masterpiece. So
Nice.
basically
Nice.
transparency, realistic budgeting, putting crews on the ground in the right places with the right information, from equipment, as I say, to, could be props, it could be art directors, to visas, a lot of international jets. We basically have a network, of trusted colleagues across the African continent that we work with.
What's your favorite part of all of that to do? Do you like the beginning part, the pricing it out, the doing it? Do you like the being out in the bush and actually, or being out on set and running that side of it? What's your favorite?
Not many people will say that. I actually enjoy the whole volume of it. I enjoy taking the brief, going out. It's basically the whole encapsulation of everything I really enjoy. I think after doing it for so many years, it's nice to see an entire project through. Wesley and I are together at the moment, have kind of divided the aspects of our company up. I mostly do new clients and creative. Wes is the head of production. So we've basically, diversified our roles that we can basically give our clients a bit more, personal aspects in terms of the productions. Obviously, a lot of the times, if there are big shoots happening, Wesley will go out on some of the productions. I'll go out on some of them. It just depends on the market and how our client base and where we're at, with productions and that. But we're working well together. It's nice to have a great partner. Every partner does butt heads now and again, but we're fortunate to be grown-ups and men and sit around a table and iron things out. And I think our clients also see that's two people working together, in a hard environment and challenging environments is not easy to find.
I got lucky with partnering with a gentleman, Kip.
Yes, yes. Oh,
Kip,
amazing man. He
doesn't
knows he's amazing, so I don't need to
he
say it.
doesn't yeah, we don't butt heads because he doesn't butt heads with anybody. So I'm like, this is awesome. Yeah. You sometimes get people, they bond in trauma or they bond in negativity. Oh, we didn't like that. They all start doing it. But I was always attracted to the people like Kip who you bond based on, oh my God, let's just sit here and look at the stars for an hour. Things like that, like just enjoying what was there. And that's what I always loved about meeting somebody like a Kip. You just got to experience the shoot as opposed to doing the shoot,
Yes,
which I
yeah.
think is
Yeah,
important to help
it's
with
the same.
content.
No, absolutely. Just stand back and, take in what's around you, then just actually being so focused in it. Because as you say, it helps the shoot a lot of the time when you just sit back and appreciate what's around you, because there's certain aspects of things that if you hadn't have done that, you would have missed it.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't have been, a memorable experience or a connectivity. And that's, I think, the great thing about, as with what we do, is sitting back a lot of the time. It could be around a fire, it could be a half an hour break with a motor broken on a boat or something, and everyone's like, oh, can I look where we are? It could be worse, what we're doing. Yeah. So it's really interesting.
What do you look back on as one of your stories that you always tell crew members? Some wild story that you're always like, all right, there was this time. What's the one that you tell?
Oh, I'd have to think of that now. I was an AD, an assistant director for a while. And
Oof,
in
that's a
those
hard
days, I
job.
had a subsidiary company that just did locations for the international market for film and events. And I was ADing for a company out of London, and they did all of Orange Network's Formula One work. And one of the production managers who came out, the company was out of the UK, and they used to send the entire team out to South Africa for a shoot period. It could be a month or 2 months, and one of the production managers said, "You're about to meet somebody who's a character, but who has great history. I think you're going to enjoy this next month." And it basically was a guy who was the founder, executive producer of a company in London, and came out, and he used to be AC/DC's band manager. So, with the hair falling on top over here. But we did a week's worth of scouts, and I'd never experienced this, and I was still quite young, in my career. I think I'd done 2 years of ADing after, unit production managing. And we flew around in a helicopter looking for a specific location for a client of his, of a house on water, to spend 5 days. And, I'd been in helicopters, but never had worked with somebody on the par of who he was, the character that he was on his own. It just exuded. That's somebody who had a million stories that he could tell that would, blow your pants off, kind of thing. But just that kind of experience was incredible. Um, Another great experience is, I have my wife and her family who are also from, have very remote bush companies in Botswana, funny enough. And I took Wesley, my business partner, before we were business partners, and two of my friends at DOP, who Kip knows Darren, and he also knows Paul, our location manager that's worked for me for years. And I took them on a bushman walking experience. So we went and camped in the middle of nowhere near Kai in Botswana. And for 8 days, we literally just walked with bushmen. We documented it. That was my big thing. I paid for it out of my own pocket. And basically my thing was to get the 5 Bushman songs on audio and camera. So, we went up and self-shot it ourselves. So it was a great experience. So I've got some people tell me I'm the only person with visual and the songs of the 5 sort of Botswana, Namibia Bushmen, because there are different groups that speak slightly different languages, but to sit around them for 9 days, foraging with them, hunting with them, and then to shoot for 9 hours of this, their ceremony and their trance dance, and that's truly spectacular. So I've got the drives, and I watch them now and again just to relive the experience.
That's amazing. That's the sort of stuff, that once in a lifetime stuff that we as crew members, I don't think people fully grasp that we get to be a part of that. That's what I love about the job that I have. Just the one in a million things that.
And I must admit, my other fond memory. Sorry to interrupt. My other fond memory is the horseback expedition that we did across Mongolia. I don't think many people ever actually get to experience Mongolia.
You did a horseback all the way across Mongolia?
Yeah, we had 2 protagonists that were riders. We shot the TV show called The Ride. One was the ride of Sir Harry Smith, and the other one was the ride of Dick King. And then we did Genghis Khan's ride across Mongolia. And obviously the landscape, it's a race that there's a company out of the UK called The Adventurists that host this. But to experience Mongolia, I was in a Land Cruiser, I wasn't a rider, luckily. But to experience 1,000 kilometers across true Mongolian wild landscape, sleeping every night in nomadic Mongolian gurs, and also going to some of some of Genghis Khan's old urtus, which is horse swapovers for his messengers or his army, and sleeping somewhere on a river where, a culturally significant person of Eurasia or Asia spent nights, as you say, sitting there and taking it, closing your eyes and going, I could be back 1,000 years here, that kind of thing.
Mark, I want to thank you so much for being on the show today and for sharing everything with us. I had such a good time. Thank you so much for all of this.
No, thank you very much for having me, having me on the show. It's a great pleasure.